Welcome to the Symposium on Leveraging Public Governance to Accelerate the Achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, Transformation, Innovation, and Inclusion. The symposium is co-organized by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs and the Ministry of the Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea with support from Incheon Metropolitan City. My name is Mi-kyung Park, Governance and Public Administration Officer of the United Nations Project Office on Governance of DPIDG UNDESA. It is my great honor to be the MC for today's program. First of all, we would like to thank all participants who have made great efforts to attend this symposium. We are very delighted to meet you all here today. We hope that this three-day symposium could serve as a valuable platform for knowledge sharing and exchange of innovative practices in leveraging public governance for accelerating SDG implementation. Now, let's begin the first plenary session. The title of this session is Strengthening Institutions and Accelerating Country Progress on the 2030 Agenda. The moderator for this session is Mr. Jae-geun Jung, head of the UNPOG. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Chung to the stage. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Welcome to the Regional Symposium with the overarching theme on leveraging public governance to accelerate the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals, Transformation, Innovation, and Inclusion. I hope you have enjoyed your stay so far here in Seongdo, Incheon. Though this first plenary session is not the official opening session, as UN Under-Secretary General Ryu Jun-min and Korea's Minister of the Interior and Safety, Jin Young, will deliver their official remarks during the high-level session tomorrow. I'd like to give you a short introduction on our 2019 symposium. This marks the third time that UNDESA's DPIDG UNPOG organizes the regional symposium, now an annual flagship event for UNDESA. This symposium will have more than 200 participants from the ASEAN Pacific region, once foreign government officials who have been doing their master and doctoral studies at KDI schools and Seoul National Universities will join tomorrow. I'm very happy to witness that the number of participants has increased by such a large margin compared with the first symposium we organized 3 years ago, particularly the number of self-funded participants. This confirms that this flagship gathering we organize each year to strengthen public governance for the SDGs has increasing interest and commitment from regional stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, we have only about 10 years remaining to achieve the SDGs. 2030 Agenda was set as an ambitious and aspirational agenda, and many countries have shown through their voluntary national reviews, as we hear today, that they are making concerted progress to achieve its 17 goals. But the message we have heard repeatedly in the last few months, including by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, is that we must adopt a sense of urgency as we enter these last 10 years. I hope this year's symposium will become an even more important venue for us to particularly discuss on how we accept this sense of urgency to accelerate progress of implementation of SDG. We'll begin these 3 days by looking at foundational role of public institutions and leadership, through which governments can provide in confronting challenges with innovative solutions, share lessons, exchange good practices. and build result-oriented partnerships for SDG implementation. We have done our best to ensure the program of Symposium was designed in a need-based manner, where many of you may recall you completed a survey earlier this year on your priority topics for the Symposium. I confirm that we have taken every responses into account, and this has led to development of the agenda we have ahead of us over next 3 days. We'll continue to follow with you to ensure evaluation and follow for impact-driven activities. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to express my gratitude to Korea's Ministry of the Interior and Safety and Incheon Metropolitan City Government for their strong support. I would also like to thank the participation of our domestic institutions, designated distinguished academics and resource persons. I also hope to continue strengthening our cooperation in the service of member states with international institutions here today, including UNESCO, UNDLR, Green Climate Fund, World Economic Forum, IBM, KPMs, and other partners. Special thanks go to my colleague, Ms. Adriana Alberti, Chief of the Capacity Development Unit of DESA's DPIDG, and her team for their strong support from the very beginning of preparing for this symposium. With this introduction of the symposium, I will now open the first plenary session on strengthening institutions and accelerating country progress on the 2030 agenda. Before I move ahead, I would like to introduce our esteemed partner from Sri Lanka, Dr. Sugat Yalegama, Director General of the Sustainable Development Council of the Ministry of Mihali Development and Environment, who will be our official rapporteur, summarizing key policy recommendations and report back to plenary on day 3. Thank you, Dr. Yalegama, with our big hands. Thank you. This past month, the General Assembly adopted a resolution as a result of the SDG Summit convened by the Secretary General this 24th, 25th September, outlining 10 accelerators for the next decade of SDG implementation. Strengthening institutions for more integrated solutions was recognized as one of these the key accelerators. We recognize the public institutions have a critical role in implementing the SDG through the plans they set, the policies and programs they craft, and the public services delivered for the benefits of each and every citizen. However, we also know that public institutions have a wide variety of knowledge, skills, and capacity gaps. For example, are public institutions in rural areas equally fit for purpose to deliver on the SDG? Are public institutions across number states equally resources to accelerate SDG implementation in these 10 years? We require a sense of urgency in addressing these well-known gaps and equipping our public institutions equitably to accelerate country progress equitably. This session will present an overview of SDG implementation in the region, a look at how public institutions are faring and highlight 2019 cases on voluntary national reviews shared during the 2019 HLPAD, where SDG 16 was reviewed. To begin the first part of the session, I'd like to ask Ms. Adriana Alberti Chief of the Program Management and Capacity Development Unit of Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government, DESA, and Mr. Sang-min Nam, Deputy Head of UNESCO's East and Northeast Asia Office. Please take the stage here with me. Thank you. Sang-min? Yes, second chair. Now, let me have the pleasure of inviting Ms. Adriana of our DPIDG in UNDESA to introduce more on institutional change for policy coherence and new capacities for SDG implementation.
Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to join my colleague, Mr. Chong, in thanking very much the co-organizers of this event, in particular the Ministry of the Interior and Safety, for their great support, as well as the Incheon Metropolitan. I would also like to welcome all of you and thank you for your participation. I hope that these 3 days will be very productive and also engaging. We think that by co-producing and by working together, we shall make this event much more beneficial for all of us. My presentation today is about institutional change for policy coherence and new capacities for SDG implementation. So we all know that effective, inclusive, and accountable public institutions are critical to achieving all of the SDGs. They are a foundational element because when we look at all of these SDGs, most of them have to do with public services, whether it's education, whether it's health, sanitation, addressing issues of gender equality. All of these issues require strong institutions and proactive government intervention in all different sectors, working with various stakeholders. We also know that the 2030 Agenda requires new capacities to implement the SDGs, and some of them are inclusive institutions and integrated approaches, and we heard that one of the key accelerators for SDG implementation, as outlined in the political declaration of the SDG Summit of 2019, is integrated responses and solutions. And this has to do a lot with policy coherence, which is our next important capacity that is needed. We also need social inclusion, and we will see later on that social inclusion and leaving no one behind has been one of the most left behind, actually, dimensions of development. Evidence-based policy, we know that that is extremely important. And then, of course, mobilizing the means of implementation, which includes resources, but it also includes partnerships and working together with different stakeholders. So in the past 20 years, the way that sustainable development has been approached is from a silo perspective. In other words, economy, society, environment were seen as separate elements of the development project. Whereas the 2030 Agenda has very well shed light on the interrelationships between the three dimensions of sustainable development, environment, society, and economy, whereas now it is very important to look at these three in a holistic and integrated manner. However, we know that many countries have been setting up new institutional arrangements for policy coherence. We have heard them throughout also the voluntary national reviews. But when we discuss with different government officials, what comes about most often is that in reality, there remain many challenges. These new institutions have been set up, but they are not working. And why? Because government agencies, ministries are still working in silos. You can see the silos. And therefore, there is still a weak horizontal coordination at the level of central government. And at the same time, there are still mismatches between the national and the local level governance. And therefore, there is weak, what we call vertical integration. So the question then is, if there are so many efforts to put in place these new institutional arrangements for policy coherence, what is happening? Why do they not produce the results that they are intended for? And this brings us to a very important question, which is understanding what institutions are and how they change, and what are the building blocks that need to be taken into account when thinking about new institutions, and in this particular case for policy coherence. And this is one of my favorite examples of how we should see and understand the complex nature of institutions. Whereas there is often a misperception that institutions are only constituted by rules and regulations. We know that institutions carry with them underlying beliefs, values, which orient the behavior of public servants. Therefore, efforts at only changing the formal rules of institutions does not always produce desired results, or let's say does not often produce, because in reality, changing the hidden part of institutions is much more complicated. It takes much more time than changing the prescriptions and the rules. So what are the structural dimensions for institutional change? Well, number one, we need to understand what are the values. Do an assessment of values within government, but also within society. And this can be done, for example, through a multi-stakeholder consultation. So what are the values that inform behaviors within the public sector, within a specific public sector? And this can only come from within the particular context. And so in the case of policy coherence, we would need to understand, are values of collaboration cherished? Do our values of openness, knowledge sharing? So how are all of these different values taken into account? And values are prescriptions for being. So what are the essential elements that will then allow to reorient the behavior of actors within government and within society? The second point is goals. So first of all, there is an important element, which is defining a vision and priorities, and for the particular institution that is being set up, what are the goals of that institution? Because we know that institutions are social constructs that are designed to perform specific goals. So what are the goals? Third, what are the rules? So the normative frameworks, and in this case, rules are prescriptions for action. And they will shape the way that actors behave. They constrain and they limit the behaviors. And the fourth one is resources. So mapping, what kind of available resources are there? And here, we can look at human resources, financial and technical, including technology and ICTs, which is a very important enabler as we know it. Therefore, it is important to understand what human resources, financial, technical, are available, and what human, financial, and technical resources are needed to promote policy coherence within government and across with a whole of society approach. The other key elements are changing mindsets and behaviors. And here, for example, we know that system thinking is extremely important for policy coherence. Now, we know that institutions are context specific, and they do not exist in a vacuum. So what happens when new institutions are designed? Well, they are designed within a specific context, and they very often carry past behaviors with them. So it is extremely important to understand what are the new values, the beliefs, and then what behaviors, what new behaviors do we want to see in order to achieve the goals of that particular institution. So this is a critical issue. And then the structures. What structures are being put in place, what types of mandates, for example, promoting interministerial cross-sectoral coordination, what type of structures are needed? And then the processes, how do we engage, for example, stakeholders, how do we engage people within, across ministries, and what are the workflows and the different actors that are to be engaged. And we have some key success factors, and one of them, of course, is political will and to solve the problems that are at hand, but especially transformational leadership, and leadership that embodies the values of the new institutions that are being set up. This is extremely important to show, to give the good example, and also to make sure that there is a following when we talk about, for example, collaboration, openness, transparency, and to promote shared, to go from a single interest, which is what happens in many instances, so each ministry works, within their own boundaries, to changing their mindset into, we need to achieve, we need to go from, and this is not from me, but from Singapore, a very interesting digital transformation, and the chief information officer said, we need to go from an ego system to an ecosystem. And I thought that was, so I'm borrowing that from him. And so that is extremely important. Then, of course, as I said, awareness of context-specific problems. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions. Each situation is different. And then the new institution that is being set up needs to be, legitimate. There needs to be a consultation. It needs to be bottom-up, top-down. There needs to be a way of accepting it. Otherwise, as I said, we will only have form but not function, and the institution itself will not be useful for the goals of policy coherence. So summing up, policy coherence requires more than changing the rules. System thinking is a mindset that can help to implement coherent policies. And then effective institutional change, particularly changing mindsets, is the backbone for strengthening systems. And we have one of the 11 ECOSOC principles of effective governance for sustainable development is competence, and tomorrow we will hear from a distinguished SEPA member what these principles are about. So because equipping public servants with the right capacities to implement the SDGs is so fundamental in promoting institutional change, DESA, working very closely with our colleagues here in UMPOG, we have launched a global initiative working together with schools of public administration. And you can see some of these photos are from last year when we had the symposium here in Incheon. And the task force of the Asia-Pacific Task Force worked together to design a competency framework. So what are the mindsets and the competencies that are needed to implement the SDGs? And the objectives of this initiative is really to inspire public leaders and government officials to mainstream the principles of the 2030 Agenda, and also include the SDGs, in their strategies, plans, and programs. Also to stimulate them to create new curricula that address issues related to SDGs, and to promote understanding of what are the new capacities, what are the new competencies, and how can new mindsets be promoted. And how do we work with the schools of public administration? Well, in a way, it's a unique approach because we follow four main, let's say, dimensions. One is co-creation. We do not design ourselves all of these trainings. Actually, most of the work is done by the schools of public administration. We only facilitate the dialogue among them, but the work is done by the schools. And we adopt a holistic approach, so what we try to do is looking at individual level, organizational, institutional, and societal through the development of a curriculum on governance for the SDGs, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And also looking at transformational impact, so how all of these three levels, not just one, because capacity building is not just about training at the individual level, but it's much bigger than that, and it's touching upon all of the elements that I just described before. And sustainability, because schools of public administration, schools of government that work with government officials are the capacity developers. So this initiative has sustainability because they lead the process of building capacities. And this, just in a nutshell, shows you the centrality of public servants to implement the SDGs, how we work with them, and how it is a co-creational process. And the ultimate goal is really to impact the quality of public service and to achieve the SDGs. And this is the competency framework that we developed following the principles of the 2030 Agenda, transformation, integration, leaving no one behind, and universality. And we also looked at the 11 principles of effective governance for sustainable development to see that they were mainstreamed. And I will not go into all of these because I think my time is almost over, but the task force itself came up with some of the new mindsets and key competencies, for example, transformative, proactive, forward-thinking, innovative, creativity, design thinking, integrative, evidence-based, information literacy, etc. And this just gives you a little bit of a flavor of how much the task force worked in identifying the mindsets and the competencies. And these are the other ones for universality and leaving no one behind, but they're just samples. And finally, I wanted to briefly mention our curriculum on governance, where we have different task forces. There's a task force in Africa, a task force in Asia Pacific. We are also working now with Central Asian countries. We will have a meeting very soon there, also organized with our colleagues from UNPOP. And we are also working with schools of public administration in Latin America. So the curriculum is being developed by DESA together with the schools of public administration. The transformational leadership was developed by the Africa Task Force. And then you will see that all of these training toolkits represent important pillars of governance transformation. And these were suggested by schools of public administration. So we have discussions with them, and we will continue to work with them to get their feedback. And we will also have a session, actually 3 sessions here, where we will introduce to you the training toolkits on strengthening institutional effectiveness and national to local governance for the achievement of the SDGs, as well as government innovation for social inclusion of vulnerable groups, and government innovation for disaster risk reduction and resilience. And we very much look forward to your contribution, your feedback, and your comments. We believe that our role is to facilitate a dialogue and to engage all of you so that in the end we can have something that is useful for each country and that can be adapted to your own local circumstances. And with this, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Adriana. Adriana very much engaged and committed building public administration school network across the world because to build this network is essential to implement 2030 agenda because if we make change, if we want to make change, the first thing is the public officials' attitude should be changed and their behavior should be changed. So now the DESA, the DPIDG and DESA having their sample curricula on governance across the bottom of discussing from the continent. So hopefully we'll see very the completed version of the suggested module curricula for governance. We're expecting. So thank you again, Juliana. And I have only one question from the floor. Okay, Yaligama. The microphone, give him to. No? You can give him.
Thank you, Adriana, for the very interesting presentation. In fact, it's really awakening the public administration throughout the world and how it happens. So my question is around, we said we have to change from the ecosystem to an ecosystem. Yes, so we need an ecosystem, and system thinking is what is needed very much. I mean, if you want to have an integrated approach, so integrated solutions, to have integrated solutions, you need the system thinking. Or if you look at how the governments work throughout the world, is to have different sectors, the agriculture sector, transport sector, industry sector, different sectors. And their plans are based on these sectors, around these sectors. Then can you really achieve this integrated approach and the system thinking with sectors operating like this? I mean, how can you achieve this goal of system thinking with sectors, within this sectors approach? And does the 2030 agenda really need, I mean, it is requiring a change from this system, the sectoral approach to a system thinking approach? Is that what you are really proposing? Right? I mean, if that is the case, of course, that message should be given very strong, right? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. And in fact, that's one of the key issues, and that's why we think that number one, also competencies are very important, and having that type of capacity building within governments, but also looking at what new institutional setups can help to go from a single interest to a shared purpose. So there has to be various, elements that are put in place in order to allow for that integration to happen. And at the same time, there are also new methodologies and new approaches that are being, experimented. And this morning, you will be able to experience one of the possible methodologies in terms of igniting, this type of working together, which is by adopting design thinking. And we will have this exercise when we finish this session. So I'm not saying that's the only one, but it's very important, as I said, to look at what is the new institutional setup, and that the way that the rules, the behaviors, the structures, the processes, all of that has to be conducive to breaking the silos and working across ministries. And there are already some examples of some countries that have been able to to do that, not in a perfect way, because I think that this is work in progress for many countries around the world. But there are certainly some good examples of whole of government approaches, and I think that we will hear also from some distinguished panelists later on what they have been doing in that sense.
Okay, thank you, Juliana. Okay. Now I'd like to introduce Sang-min Nam, the Deputy Head of UNESCO's East and Northeast Asia Office, to present on the regional review on the progress, gaps and challenges in SDG implementation in the Asia Pacific. After his presentation, I also have one question.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Good morning.
Good morning.
So my presentation is focusing, I'm utilizing the review made by ESCAP on SDG implementation in Asia Pacific countries. First, let me briefly highlight our own assessment on the progress in the SDG implementation. As you can see, all 17 goals we are behind in implementation. So, but meanwhile, we have seen relatively good progress in some goals. One is poverty, goal 1, and then education, goal 4. So we have a relatively good, and then also clean energy. So we have a progress in those 3 goals. But the one we are regressing is responsible consumption and production, goal 12. And many environmental goals, we are not making progress. That's one point. And that's another point is many environmental goals, we don't have sufficient data. So today we have participants from 30 countries. I guess I hope you have also a chance to share your view on your own progress. So this is one element. And also here I'm highlighting the inefficiency of data for review. As you see, 41% of indicators are missing data, and then 23% have inefficient data. So we are evaluating this progress based on only 36% of indicators. So this is a challenge. So in order to measure our progress, we need a measurable data and information. So how to fill the gap, this is also presented in your voluntary national review report. And in terms of, I'm also here looking at more specific target of SDGs. We have seen progress in 83 indicators. And then, but here, it's too small to, we will distribute this slide after. Those are reverse trend. Many actually related to belong to environmental related SDGs. As I highlighted earlier, sustainable consumption production is one, and climate change is another one, and also life on land, goal 15 and goal 14. So we have quite significant challenges in making progress in environmental related goals. So, and we have seen this institutional settings in support of SDG implementation. Nevertheless, many are created based on SDG, MDG structure. And there is still challenge for integration into national development plans and policies. I will show some of the cases later, and then also adoption to national context and coordination. And as it is meeting on governance, I wish also late highlight CSO involvement in the process. And then here we look at those challenges identified by voluntary national review. Many countries identified capacity and financial resources as key challenges. And then in the process of VNR, many countries certainly they face the inefficient data. So most countries highlight the data, statistics as a key challenge. And then again, it just on this slide, so many countries highlight the factor endowment, their geography, especially small island developing status, and LLDCs highlighting factor endowment, whether their geographical location, their natural resources as a key challenge. I was told that here we have and then there are countries created this coordination mechanism, whether National Council or National Commission on Sustainable Development. And many countries also created inter-agency working groups in the process of VNR. But still, many countries haven't created any dedicated mechanisms. Some countries are National Commission, National Development Agencies coordinating the process. For some cases, even Korea, it is a Ministry of Environment. So let me also ask you whether your country has created a National Council or National Commission on Sustainable Development. Could you raise your hand? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So out of 30 countries here presenting today, 11 countries have this National Council or Commission. And working groups. You are raising India. Okay, quite many. And no mechanism, no separate dedicated institution. It's quite different from our assessment. So more or less you have inter-agency working groups. And then also I'm wondering, many working groups were certainly created in the process of VNR, but whether the working groups still exist after that. You know, many working groups, inter-agency working groups were created during VNR process, yeah? And then whether it still exists even after that. So you are from India, you raised the hand twice. Yeah?
In India we have a very institutional mechanism both at the federal government level and at the subnational level, which coordinates the entire work on all the SDGs along with the state governments and the state and union territories, and also along with all the line ministries at the level of the federal government. So these working groups were created. So there is a National Institution for Transforming India, which is coordinating and the nodal agency for SDGs for the entire country. The thematic working groups were created and an SDG task force was created when India presented its first VNR in 2017. So this task force also continues meeting twice or thrice in a year and directing and guiding the work on SDGs. And we'll be presenting our second VNR, so it's a very active body which monitors this entire consultations with the entire government approach and also with the whole of society approach in terms of engaging different stakeholders. So yeah, we have all these kind of, I'll be presenting in detail tomorrow.
Thank you, thank you. And I was, before joining ESCAP, I was also a coordinator of a subcommittee in Presidential Commission on Sustainable Development. And then, but it was quite effective institution, the commission at that time, but it doesn't exist anymore. It became under part of a environmental ministry, so there is no Presidential Commission on Sustainable Development in Korea, but there is a Committee on Sustainable Development under Ministry of Environment. And then even it was a Presidential Commission, so certainly we still face the challenges in coordinating line ministries. So having one dedicated system is one, and then whether it is effective in terms of especially coordinating line ministries and also coordinating bringing other stakeholder groups will be still challenge. Thank you. Also, this achieving, but why are we not making more progress? There are many, it is also country-specific questions. Each country faces different challenges, but if I generalize, one is the lack of a comprehensive means of implementation, especially financing, which was highlighted in all VNR. Financial resources and human capacity or institutional capacity were key challenges identified most VNR. And also more holistic and integrated policy. And then I wish to highlight this empowerment, inclusion, and equality of all. This is exercise done by ADB, UNDP, and ESCA for our joint report. So in a way to enhance the participation of stakeholders. So we look at those empowerment and inclusion. For empowerment and inclusion framework, we identified 4 areas. One is rights and justice, and especially related to gender, and goal 8 is decent work. And then resources and capabilities, 4 SDG 4 education, and 5 gender, and then also participation and voices, and norms and institutions here. So I would like to highlight a few things about this. One is participation and voices. This is a survey made by Civicus, identified that many countries are not providing effective enough spaces, civic spaces, for this CSO's participation in the policy process. And then even here, the yellow bar is obstructed, and then this the below was repressed. So many countries are having quite do not have any progress, and even do not allow civic participation in the process. So how to open civic space for SDG implementation will be key challenges for many countries. And then adverse norms and discriminatory institutions. Adriana, she highlighted the importance of mindset. So norms is informal rules and practices. This is also directly related to mindset. And then many countries here 6 countries in Asia Pacific lack any form of a dedicated domestic violence legislation, and 27 countries were yet to criminalize marital rape, and 11 countries still lack any forms of legislation against sexual harassment. So this also child marriage is one, child marriage and the child labor is another important source issue. So this kind of norms, and then institutionality institutions, so as I highlighted, how to change the perception, how to change informal rules and practices with a legal framework or government institutions. So that will be another challenge. So this is a key driver for participation and empowerment. And then also different opportunities for participation, also resources. Here for most Northeast Asia Pacific countries, in terms of higher education and full-time employment, those shows great inequalities for people's access to the opportunities and capacity. And also bank account, especially Southeast Asian countries, lack of a bank account means lack of economic opportunities, and especially formal sector. And clean fuels is another challenge for many, especially South Asian countries or Southeast Asian countries. So providing equal access to resources and capability will be another key to enhance participation and empowerment. And SCAP, we have collected various best practices. This is the first one on the left side. This is a global platform, and then we have seen that many cases were collected from Asia Pacific countries. And then we have this SDG help desk, and there are many platforms that we provide countries. Okay, I have 1 minute. And there is a process for sub-regional. We have many countries from Asia Pacific countries. We have a sub-regional process on SDG annual process. And then there is also a regional process, which is called APFSD, Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. I hope you utilize these sub-regional regional processes. And then during last 6 years, we have seen increasing number of stakeholders in this, especially regional process. Even this year, we had about just 1,000 participants from 145 major stakeholder groups, and also many, almost government. So please utilize this regional process to learn from others and to showcase your best practices. So my conclusion is, we have quite a good progress in implementation compared with the MDGs, but the speed is not fast enough, scale is not big enough. That's another challenge. And needed to pay more attention to structural barriers. And then stakeholder engagement and participation is key to many cases. Yeah, with that, let me conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sang-min. We have one question due to the time constraint. Any question? Okay, we'll have the more discussion session, the last part of this plenary. So if you have any question, then you can ask later. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sang-min. Okay. Now, I'd like to invite our two next speakers to introduce their country cases on voluntary national reviews presented during the 2019 HLPF, where SDG 16 reviewed. Okay, first speaker is Ms. Sovanari Ta, Deputy Director, Ministry of Planning from Cambodia, and second speaker is Ms. Mary-Ann Tarawa, Director for Social Development, National Economic and Development Authority, Philippine. Okay, after two presentations, we'll have two presenters on the stage and then have a Q&A session. Now, we'll hear first from Ms. Sovanari Ta from Cambodia.
Good morning, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Yes, it is my great honor to be here to present the Cambodia 19 voluntary national review of implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Yes, as Mr. Jung already present you about my name. I'm Sovanari. I'm a Deputy Director of Department, Ministry of Planning, Cambodia. Okay. Regarding my presentation, I'm gonna to talk first about the background and second the preparation process of the VNO 2019 of Cambodian Sustainable Development Goal. And the third, I will provide the result of the VNO. And the last one is the conclusion and the way forward. Yes, Cambodian Sustainable Development approved by the Council of Ministry in 19 November 2018. And as Cambodia is a country among the countries in the region who present the VNO 2019 of the Cambodian Sustainable Development implementation in the high-level political forum in New York in July 2019, and it means that Cambodia registered for the presenting the VNO very short time. Yeah, we took only like about 5 months from January to June. So the time is so constrained for Cambodia. And now let me move to the second point, the preparation process of VNO or the Cambodian Sustainable Development Goal. Now I would like to let you know that Cambodia, like we adopt all the 17 goals. However, we added another one's goal for the national goal for the clear mind. And I would like to not talk much about the like how long history about the process, but I just highlight only 5 points. The first, we like cooperate with the UN ESCAP. We provide the national workshop for providing the guideline to line ministry and agency about the input preparation. And at that time, it means that all stakeholders also encouraged to cooperate and provide the input for the VNO 2019 preparation, and more open engagement from the stakeholders such as the development partners, civil society organization, academia, national unity for local council, and private sectors. And then we have draft the VNO reports based on the input, by like we work as a desk review, and then made us unable to discuss and comment challenges, and like promoting joint working across the ministry. And regarding the review, the drafts, like we with the two meeting. First is we work as with the interministerial technical meeting and then with the high level meeting like for the policy maker. And the fourth point is review and approve in economic and financial policy committee. The last one, finally, we got the report that's signed by the Prime Minister. Yes, this picture is show us how the VNR use the approach and sources to compile the document, the reports, and the discussion and analysis with the VNRs are based on a mixed method. Research approach such as the stock taking or the current position, and as I mentioned earlier, with the desk review and interview of key stakeholders to evaluate the progress. And as we can see, for the structure and the VNR process adopted on open and inclusive approach, and it means that it relies on a wide variety of both quantitative and qualitative data and information. However, even for example, Ministry of Planning is the central agency, like we lead and coordinate with the Line Ministry and other relevant stakeholders, but we still face the data gap and information for measuring the targets. Okay, let me move to the next point, the result of VNR 2019. As we proposed the 6 goals for detailed report in 2019 by UN. Yes. First, we have CSDG 4, CSDG 8, CSDG 10, CSDG 13, CSDG 16, and the last one is CSDG 17. And as we are now in the plenary session 1, we will. I would like to highlight more about the CSDG 16. Yes, later, and another 12 goals of CSDG. Yeah, CSDG 1. Goal 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11, 12, 14, 15, and another one is a national goal, goal 18. And the next ones, I would like to highlight that as from this picture we can see that the set VNR priorities goal, yes, we got over 60% hit are on track, and the remaining 12 goals, yeah, only 12 below tracks. Okay, so now let's me elaborate more about the CIDG 16, as I mentioned earlier. Like the government of Cambodia try to continue to put in the policy for the country as the good governance is the core comprehensive for the development of the countries, and the government continue for like the fight against corruption by like we have a ministry of like we call Monasri, Ministry of Senate, Assembly, and relation and inspection for like they try to make the policy to all, not only the people in the national level, but to the local authority, something like that. And this time up. Yes, now let me stress more about the progress of CIDG 16 that we can see from these pictures that we the promote rule of law. As I mentioned earlier, we still face we have the challenge with that. Like we need a lot of money to produce the laws, and so that in the progress we still have no data. And for the promotion of female governance official, yes, that is it's good. It is on track that we can see from the picture. From 2016, we have only 40%, and in 2018 we have 41%. It means that we increase 1%. And about the legal, like the government has a policy to provide a legal identity for all, including the birth registration for all. It means that no one left behind. Yes. Sorry, because of the time's up. Yes, I would love to say that CIDG's implementation still continue and require participation from all actors in the society, and also from the private sector and citizen as well. And we have to integrate like the CIDG with the policy and plan system. Yes. And as Cambodia is the we move to the low middle income, so that we let us grant, we decline the grant, and it means that we face the burdens national budget, so that we need more financial mobility in the national budget, especially from private sector, in order to achieve the CIDGs. And yes, the last one is no one left behind is that is the core common principle of the United Nations and other nations and Cambodia as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tom. Now we'll hear from Ms. Darwai of the Philippine National Economic and Development Authority.
Good morning, colleagues in the field of development, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to share the Philippines' experience to the Symposium on Leveraging Public Governance to accelerate the achievement of SDGs through transformation, innovation, and inclusion. Today, I will share our experience in our VNR preparation. I want to highlight that while the VNR process has the intention to review institutions, in our context, we used it to strengthen institutions as well and renew and reinvigorate commitments towards meeting the SDGs. I am Marianne Daraway of the Social Development Staff of the National Economic Authority, and our presentation is entitled VNRs, Reviewing Strength of Institutions and Strengthening Institutions. For the first part of this presentation, we will discuss how the Philippines VNR has reviewed the strength of its institutions, not just through the review of our efforts for Goal 16, but all goals as well. Goal 16, which highlights the strengthening of the capacity of the institutions, is strategic and is a catalyst to other goals. One of the main messages of our VNR is the role of government and public institutions in providing space for participation and cooperation by non-government actors towards contributing to the SDGs. For the second part of this presentation, we will look at how the process of the VNR has in turn strengthened institutions through the conduct of public consultations. Please allow us to play a short clip from the Philippines VNR.
Own our world to live the life we want, a life where no one is left behind. This is the primary reason why the attainment of these goals are at the heart of the country's development agenda. The Philippines has carried out a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach in the implementation of the SDGs. National actions are grounded in laws to ensure robustness. Cross-sectoral coordination and orchestration of actions are done through existing institutional mechanisms. Stakeholders are informed and engaged in discussions. The Sustainable Development Goals are integrated in the Philippine Development Plan, or PDP, the economic blueprint, which officially guides all other development plans and sectoral policy frameworks in the country. Nationally determined SDG targets are also identified and reflected in the results matrices, a companion document of the Philippine Development Plan. While the government has served as the primary catalyst for these efforts, non-government organizations have also taken initiatives to contribute to the agenda. The private sector, civil society, Filipino youth, influential figures, academia, and development partners all work together to commit to certain causes that aim to achieve quality education.
What we want to highlight in the video clip is the role of public institutions and non-government stakeholders such as the private sector in catalyzing actions of SDGs and the integration of SDGs in our national, regional, and sectoral development agenda. As part of the VNR, we reviewed the processes for the implementation of the SDGs. We have used existing institutional mechanisms in the implementation of the Philippine Development Plan. On your screen is the overall strategic framework of the Philippine Development Plan. By 2022, we aim to lay down the foundation for inclusive growth, a high trust and resilient society, and a globally competitive knowledge economy. This requires enhancing the social fabric, inequality, reducing transformation, and increasing growth potential. This will be based on a foundation that is sustainable, peaceful, and resilient. Each box on the screen is equivalent to one chapter of the Philippine Development Plan. We deem it important that the SDGs and our long-term vision are integrated into the Philippine Development Plan, the country's blueprint for development. Here you can see how the SDGs are laid down in our strategic framework. In our report, we highlight this integration and the consistency of the indicators and targets. And this way, the implementation of the SDGs hinges on existing competencies and resources. Let me show you SDG 16. For the pillar on enhancing the social fabric, strategies include improvements in public service, delivery, and regulatory reform, justice sector reform, and the mainstreaming of culture in development and governance. The objective is to regain people's trust in public institutions and cultivate trust in fellow Filipinos. SDG 16, which focuses on attaining peace, justice, and strong institutions, closely corresponds to this goal, as many of the crime and governance-related indicators are found here. The VNR used was used to re-engage local institutions for SDGs. The Open Government Partnership in one of our provinces, South Cotabato in Mindanao, built transparency and trust in government in a war-torn area who also has a low trust level. With this introduction of the Open Government Partnership, better willingness from people to participate and access to social services was improved. SDG 16 and institutional building strategies became catalysts for the other SDGs. For the VNR, among the goals that we reviewed was, of course, Goal 16. Here we look at the SDG 6.5 target, which is sustainability or sustainably reduce corruption and bribery in all their forms. Note that this is one of the many indicators reviewed for the Goal 16 section of the Philippine VNR. In general, frequency of bribery has decreased. Data from 2013 to 2017 shows that there has been a marked reduction in bribing attempts relative to the total number of families who made a government transaction. The reduction in the proportion of bribery attempts have been noticeably for social services transactions and securing a registry and security of registry documents and licenses, whilst all that for access to justice tends to highly fluctuate. The Office of the Ombudsman has strengthened its punitive, preventive, and promotional strategies, and in the first 5 months of 2018, 100% of appellate cases have been affirmed by the Supreme Court for criminal dispositions. Conviction rate has also reached 81% of the first quarter of 2018 as compared to 77% in 2016. This data is sourced from the National Household Survey or on experience with corruption in the Philippines by the Office of the Ombudsman. The survey is conducted through the inclusion of rider questions to the Annual Poverty Indicators Survey, a nationwide survey conducted by the Philippine Statistics Authority that presents data on the socio-economic profile of Filipino families and other information that relates to their living conditions. We further note that that in the review of the other focal or focus goals of the 2019 VNR, there are also some assessments made on the capacity of government to implement programs. These are also a strong focus on how the legislative and executive departments of government have provided the policy environment for non-government actors to contribute to development. To promote participatory governance, the country has also consistently fulfilled its national action plans for the Open Government Partnership, or OGP, which promotes co-creation of interventions among stakeholders, including the government, civil society, and the private sector. The OGP has been key to the development of the South Cotabato Open Government Partnership, and the province is currently implementing 5 commitments from their 2018 to 2020 action plan. The action plan features commitments related to open contracting, open monitoring of local infrastructure, open legislation, open mining, and freedom of information. This is expected to improve the implementation and delivery of social, economic, and environmental programs in the province. This is an example of how achieving SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions can work as a catalyst for the achievement of the other goals as we participate or anticipate the partnerships formed to be directed towards initiatives that contribute to sustainable development. There were sincere efforts also to make VNRs as consultative as possible, and we did this by conducting consultations in the 3 island provinces of island groups of the Philippines, which is Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We note how in each of these areas there were unique concerns. We ensured that there was a good mix of participants from government, civil society, academe, and from the private sector. On top of these subnational consultations, civil society groups that represented marginalized sectors such as women, persons with disability, the poor were consulted. There were also consultations exclusively for children and labor unions. While our intentions originally were focused on learning the engagement of non-government actors with the subnational governments for the SDGs, the consultations served also as a feedbacking session from the civil society, academe, and the private sector on what else needs to be done for the SDGs. Specifically, what institutions needed to be strengthened to meet the interconnected nature of the goals. We also had some feedback on how well we are doing in terms of localizing the SDGs. While we have made significant headway in terms of building statistical capacity, specifically in empowering local governments, in providing local level information on the SDGs, we are constantly learning how each sector can look beyond their sectoral mandates. We definitely had some achievements indeed. However, the challenges still remain to be, as mentioned earlier already by our previous speakers, is data generation and even data usage. data analysis actually is also key to the use of the data generated. The localization and streamlining of plans is also still a problem that we need to face, specifically with the mainstreaming of the SDGs. We intend to have one integrated plan at the local level. And then the capacitation of our local planners, that indeed we speak the same language and we have the same framework for integrating the sustainable development goals. Thus, we have adopted the principles on openness and inclusivity, and of course, adopting the approach of whole of government and the whole of society. The Philippines VNR is accessible through our SDG website, which is accessible through the link and QR code on your screen. We have also some best practices already posted here from even the local government units and the non-government agencies, or rather organizations. So my friends, we are in fact trying our best to make everybody part of our journey towards having no one left behind. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Tarawai. Please take a seat for a while. Okay, I'll please take on the stage Ms. Ta. Okay, even although we are a bit behind our schedule, but those two speakers delivered their vivid sound from their country cases. So I'd like to have several questions. Do you have any questions? Yes, sure.
Thank you very much. Very insightful, exciting, and hopeful developments are happening in most of the countries. My question actually is for Mr. Tarawai, if I may. The first one. The experiences which, or developments which are happening in the Tacubato, what is their interplay with their national plans, or what national activities going to do in order to potentially mainstream or draw some kind of lessons? This is first. And the second one, a little bit more complicated. When you speak about development of the development plans for the country, to what extent these plans were, or how did you bring SDGs there? You would do these development plans anyway for the country, isn't it? For 10 years, for 20 years. How did you inform the ministries, the partners from the civil society, etc., who participated in the development of these plans about SDGs? To what extent SDGs were catalyzing this discussion? Yeah.
For your first question on Cotabato, the national programs actually are the programs that were adopted to be implemented particularly in South Cotabato. But with the consultations undertaken with the people in South Cotabato, we were able to identify what particular needs that they would rather have, rather than applying all the programs without any direction whatsoever. But of course, our carrier program would be our conditional cash transfer, or UCT, Universal Cash Transfer, because it was a war-torn area. So we needed to already download most of the benefits that they needed through that program first, and then addressed all the other concerns already that they raised during that consultation. So that was the kind of planning that we undertook for South Cotabato. And this was actually already spearheaded by the locals themselves. So that one worked well. And then the national government already came in when they already had a specified framework and plan to adopt in South Cotabato. And then for your second question, how the other agencies were put into this one, what we did first, actually, the first commitment that we had was to identify from the 200 plus Sustainable Development Goal targets to identify which ones are most applicable to the Philippines. And this involved a lot of our national government agencies. Now, all the planners, but it was our office that collaborated with all of them through our cluster groupings in government. So, and then we had a particular cluster group on poverty and sustainable development. So through that, we invited all the other agencies to help us find out where we can develop, we can generate the information that are needed for us to address the different targets. And then from there on, they of course were oriented with regards to what the SDGs was. So it started with all information dissemination for the meantime, orientation of all our partners in different sectors. No? So they asked for briefings and orientations on the different goals first, specifically for a certain cluster. If it is for human development, then all the social development offices were involved in that orientation and also in the identification of the targets that were already specified. Actually, we have already reviewed all these targets, and because we are actually still in the midterm planning review, because as we said, so that we do not duplicate all our activities, we have to integrate them into the Philippine Development Plan so that we have the same direction. That's why we're calling it our development blueprint, because we want everyone, all sectors, to be aligned already, even at the local level, to our Philippine Development Plan. Even the ambition, the long-term vision, it's the first long-term vision of the countries, and this Philippine Development Plan is the first action plan, so to speak, to attain the vision for 2040. So in that, because 2030 is within that frame, so we thought it more importantly to already integrate the targets and the goals that have been identified with the SDGs, so that when we monitor the development of the Philippine Development Plan, which we do every year, we have an annual socio-economic report, and that's where we are also reporting on the different achievements in each of the goals, as mentioned earlier, as we presented through that framework.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. I have only one more question. Okay? Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Next to Dr. Yalagama. I don't know. Sorry.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is a pleasure to learning from the different countries, especially colleagues from Philippines and Cambodia. I'd like to have some question to the colleagues from Philippines, especially to understanding is your experience. As you mentioned, is your agency is the institution, the one is the mobilization for the planning. In our case, Timor Leste, we're also doing the similar functions. We are not only for our planning side, but we are doing the mobilization for external resource. External resources means that include some of the funding through the grants, PPP, and also the loans. We are, on this case, as based on the topic we are discussing this morning, especially how to accelerate the implementation of SDG in the local context, I'd like to learn from you all, how is your agency, especially with the coordination and mobilization for different sectors, to implement in the SDG in the local context in this device. The second one, you mentioned on the something like the blueprint. Yes, the blueprint is adopted by your country. My question is the part of the blueprint, are you include also the development partners? Development partners, I mean, from the like the UN agency, the bilateral cooperations. They are part of your program, part of the, I mean, it's included in the blueprints. I hope it's I can learn more from your side. Thank you so much.
Okay, short answer. Yeah. Okay, thank
I
you.
hope I can make it short. For your first question, in terms of institutional arrangement, right? I might be wrong. We did an interagency technical working group, of course, for the VNR, and for the SDGs, it's my office that coordinates it. But with the other agencies, of course, we also have a specialized committee for SDGs, no? But it is because we started with the targets, it is our Philippine Statistical Authority that has the interagency groups, several interagency groups already, to help identify or and monitor even the indicators, the generation of the information that can be generated. We actually had classified already the indicators and the targets into three levels, no? Tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1, which is being generated regularly and has baselines. Second is, and with methodology. Second is with no methodology, but with baselines, or basically these are administrative data, more or less, which are not yet officially recognized. And third is none at all, no methodology, no baseline. So, but it is now the plan of government to create a subcommittee, a cabinet-level subcommittee under the DBCC, the Development Budgeting Coordinating Council. No? So that's a budget, we wanted it to be connected to the budget committee, rather, a cabinet-level committee, so that we can be ensured that all sectors will have budget for fulfilling their commitments for the SDGs. So I hope I answered that well. The second one is about the PDP, the blueprint. I'm sorry, I kind of missed out on what the question was. The second question, sorry.
Yes, to understand whether part of your blueprints include also the development partners.
Oh yeah, the development partners, yes. Actually, my office even has a separate public investment staff, no? And there we deal with our development partners, and there is a particular chapter in the PDP, and I can show it to you later, on development partnership. So that's the last chapter in our, and addresses the implementation of the blueprint, or the Philippine Development Plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ta and Ms. Tarawe. Why don't you give a big applause for their effort. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I think we need more interactive discussions. So for this, I'd like to introduce Ms. Dana Nashra from IBM's Industrial Academy, who will lead us on an interactive exercise on design thinking to already equip us here today with some skills on how we can ensure more citizen-centric mindset for the SDGs.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and your excellencies. Thank you so much for this opportunity to introduce you to, or reacquaint you with, design thinking's theory and practice, and how it can be used to shift mindsets from single interest to shared purpose. And in particular, how we can use this methodology as a tool to accelerate SDG implementation. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so to get started, we wanted to showcase a quick example that shows current mindsets and thinking, which is the waterfall approach, and then the new mindset, which is using agility. So as a quick example in transportation, if someone asks you to design a way to go from point A to point B, using the traditional mindset, and using your intelligence, you might come up with, let's design a car. So what does a car include? 2 wheels, luggage, an engine, kind of really advanced components. And while that might be the right solution, it will take a few years and lots of steps to get there, which might be risky because at the end, the drivers of the car or the citizens might not really want a car. They might want another way to go from point A to point B. Using more agility mindset, instead of jumping to the conclusion that the car is, the right thing to do, you might start with a skateboard, which can quickly give you value and, move people from point A to point B. And along the way on the journey, you can go from a skateboard to a scooter to a motorcycle and then eventually get to a car. So it's kind of a more low-risk way to achieve your goals. So this is kind of to introduce you to this agility concept and to think about how we can apply starting small, scaling fast, and involving different users and changing our mindsets and how that might be applied to our own goals. Sorry, I'm not sure why this is up. Next slide, please. So one of the principles of design thinking is that it's not possible to evaluate your ideas and create new ideas at the same time. So what this methodology, which we'll very shortly be implementing, does is allow you to kind of think big, come up with lots of ideas, and then separately prioritize them based on feasibility and impact. So what this allows for is the best ideas by a big group of people to be produced. Next slide, please. So what is design thinking? So design thinking is not something new. It was developed in the 80s and 90s by institutions such as the Stanford Design School and IDEO as a methodology to creatively solve problems or explore solutions to problems. In the past 15 years, it's picked up speed in the private sector and in the public sector as a way to bring together different stakeholders and come up with solutions. These are the key phases of design thinking: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Today we'll explore the first 3 ideas, but it's very flexible and can be adjusted to whatever need that you have. Next slide, please. So who should be involved? So it is a very multidisciplinary activity. So the more diverse stakeholders you can get, the better outcomes you will have. So for example, you could include policymakers, citizens, engineers, really everyone from across the spectrum can be involved depending on the design prompt that you have. So if we go to the next slide, before you start a design thinking session, you should have a very articulate design prompt. So it's, what are you designing for? What's the topic that you're designing for? So you'll see an example of what we'll be doing in today's exercise, but when you're ready to design your design thinking workshop, you should define it within a specific theme. So it could be, for example, a hospital wants to design a better way for patients in the emergency room to be treated. Or it could be a government wants to think of ways to involve students more in policy making. So you just have to think of your specific goal in mind, and then you can design your session. So as I mentioned, it's very flexible and can be designed for your particular need. So we'll share this presentation with you, but here are some examples of agendas for sessions depending on your need. So it could range from half an hour, which we'll experience today, all the way to 1 full day to 5 days. Yeah, so here are some resources where you can learn more, but really the best way to learn design thinking is through practice. So what we'll ask you to do is please, we have 10 table teams, so if your table doesn't have the sticky notes and markers on it, please move to a table that has the supplies on it. So is everyone on a table with supplies? That's the first thing. And then you'll also have a UN team member on your table to help facilitate. So as you get set up, we'll also distribute flip charts to each table. So we're going to do 4 activities. And this is our design prompt for today. How do our public institutions ensure measurable results to accelerate SDG implementation and work collaboratively to leave no one behind? So this is our overarching theme for the session today. So in your teams, you're all assigned a fictional country scenario. So this is not based on any particular country, just some general trends globally. So the first activity, which is going to take 15 minutes, will be based on this fictional scenario. So please take 2 minutes to read the scenario, and then we're going to move on. So try and jot down some key themes that you observe when reading the country scenario. I'll also read it out loud. The landlocked country's economy relies on exporting agriculture and textiles to the surrounding region and even globally. There is also a small but growing nature-based tourism industry. However, poor infrastructure and government instability is slowing down the number of tourists that visit your fictional country. The majority of the citizens work in the informal sector, and many actually leave to find better work opportunities, education, and healthcare services. There is also a youth bulge in the country, and 80% of the population are under the age of 65. The majority of the older population live and work in rural areas, and the youth have started to move into cities, which is triggering some economic activity in the cities. But due to this, there's also congestion and pollution. Energy dependence on fossil fuel imports is high, despite the fact that ambitious targets to convert to renewable energy have been set and not been implemented because of the high costs for the conversion. There's consistent inequality in the country in terms of gender and wealth. Pre-college education levels are approximately the same between males and females, but a higher percentage of males pursue higher education. Overall, although there are many public institutions and private companies in the country, it is difficult to coordinate initiatives across the country and align on national objectives. So this is the scenario that you will deal with within your table teams. So we'll move to the next slide. So activity 1, part 1. So each of you, so on your flip charts, next slide. So on your flip charts, we're going to create 4 quadrants. The first quadrant in the upper left-hand corner is about the related UN global goals for your country. So based on what we just read, what are the relevant SDGs that your country is on, either progressing towards, digressing from, or should be considering given the different factors in the country. So as a team, so this will be a high-paced team exercise. So as a team, discuss the scenario and stick using the stickers that you have on your desks, which goals are most relevant. Okay, and after you've done that, next slide please. After you've done that in the second quadrant, also think about the institutions and stakeholders involved in this fictional scenario. So who's contributing to the as scenario? Please list out the name of the institution or stakeholder, as well as what you think is their core driving value. So for example, if it's the Ministry of Finance, what is their core value? Is it economic growth? Is it stability? So try and put yourself in the shoes of the different institutions and stakeholders that are operating in your country. So we'll take a few minutes as a team to discuss and post these first two quadrants. Are there any questions?
Can you go back to the country?
We'll go back to the country scenario, but this is the format that you should have on your flip chart. So a quadrant with 4 sections. Okay, can you please get started? You have 5 minutes to do quadrant 1 and 2.
It's just talking now, right?
I think this is, the pattern is, I find it unrealistic, but anyway, yeah.
And then also migration.
You know the challenge of land
urban area is a key issue, and then also people leaving from the country to other countries, and then what else?
Yeah, please find.
Yeah.
SDG, what is
also
it?
cities problem,
SDG 9, yes.
migration from
SDG
rural
9.
area.
Why don't I give you... SDG 8? Good. So put SDG 8. Oh, you already have it? Good, good, good. 8 and 9. They leave the country for a better opportunity. Congestion and pollution. Energy dependency on fossil fuel imports is tough.
Adriana, maybe this step.
Climate change, there were 2 questions. We have to choose because we also talk about energy. Volunteers are sacrificing. Just keep in mind someone will present at the end. So if you feel confident later, you can line ministries, anybody. Everybody is a decision.
Fields means we're working in the field.
The next 5 minutes should be focused on summarizing the pain points in your country being the fictional country, and what opportunities you see in your fictional country. So please just use your post-it notes and post as many ideas as you can think of in terms of pain points and opportunities. So that's quadrant, the bottom quadrant.
So if you have any questions, see the experts.
There's a lot happening in this country. But I think we'll move on to the next exercise, which will narrow it down a little bit. Okay.
I think they are trying to...
Thanks everyone for your work so far. Now we're going to move to activity 2, which is ideation. So in ideation, you should keep an open mind and kind of think big. So as we said earlier, we're using the agile mindset, so you can come up with as many ideas as possible without thinking of any restraints at the moment. So to help you think of ideas, so first of all, you can use a new flip chart page and title the second activity ideation. And as a first, individually, I recommend each person starts thinking of at least 3 ideas. The first 3 ideas should be easy. It's a second set of ideas that becomes more difficult. So to help you come up with ideas for your country, we developed some cards which are on each of your tables. The cards are innovation cards, transformation cards, and inclusion cards. So these cards can help prompt you to come up with ideas. We'd also like you to think back to the presentations earlier this morning. Adriana's suggestions about resources, technical resources, financial resources, social resources, could be potential ideas. Other potential ideas could be changing mindsets or changing institutional structures. So these are just to help you come up with ideas, but can each person please come up with 3 ideas? At minimum, you can use these cards to stimulate your creativity. Yeah, there's some cards.
So write down your own. It's a nature-based towards. Let's assume what the youth want. Yes. Democratization. Change constitution. So it's also impactful.
Thank you, Ms. Nashra, for this inspiring exercise. Actually, DPITG and UNFO and UNISDR, UNITAR, I'm sorry. UNITAR introduced this way of thinking and a way of solving the problems in Shanghai at the symposium this February. So at that time we thought, oh, it was good. So next time we'll have any opportunity to do this, then we'll introduce again. So it's our second exercise with the same the moderator. So I think we are improving and improving. So thank you again. Okay, now it's time to wrap up this plenary session 1. So we have reached the end of first plenary session. So I hope that we all have developed a good understanding what is the current progress of the implementation of SDG 16 in the region, learned some good lessons and shared good practices as well. The presentation by our 2 UN colleagues, Adriana and Sangmin, provided us with great insights on current progress and the capacity support available to member states. Also, 2 country presentations on 2019 Vienna are very interesting and hope their country cases inspire other member states present here today to share progress and challenges on their SDG implementation. Yes, special thanks to Dana Abunashra. And finally, I thank all our panelists for your high-quality presentation and dynamic engagement. Most of you, all the participants, proactive engagement to the last minute to making extract your creative thought. And so thank you very much, and enjoy your lunch and enjoy your the field trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. This is the end of the plenary session 1. I would like to thank once again moderator Mr. Chung and all panelists for their insightful and wonderful presentations and discussions. I'd like to also thank all the participants for your active participation.